here's a power plant thinking about getting installed, and here's kind of what they told us, maybe a little bit about the water consumption, and there was some dry cooling sort of plans out there, and they were kind of keeping them to the T. And we're like, all right, make sure they're telling us the truth. There isn't a large dry cooled power plant in Texas. Maybe they cut these guys a break because they're trying to do something that nobody else has done, and they're on the first one, but they're still trying to keep them to it. So I trust they're doing the same here in the desert Southwest of California. That's sort of the right way to do it. Those kinds of groups have been involved in all kinds of, Texas coal-powered bay in 2007 in terms of selling TXU and aluminum, going from 19 coal plants to 3. So this is what they do, and they try to work with the companies. Some of them work more closely and more cooperatively than others. So I think solar is doing pretty well.
Since this is a panel on water and solar, I was wondering if any of the studies that have been conducted, that you've conducted or that you know of, when looking at comparisons of water use by different renewable energy sources and traditional fossil fuel sources, do any of them include the, is it all freshwater issues, or does any of it include what we see with the water energy nexus going on in the Gulf right now, where water ecosystems, marine ecosystems, are devastated? Is that part of the equation, or has that been left out?
I don't know if you can comment on more California or somebody can on more issues there, but they have certain rules on withdrawing water for new power plants and FCC, seawater, and in Texas it's mostly fresh water. I think most of it's freshwater consumption as we go forward. That's the question in terms of is there a water quality issue if I use a lot of seawater? Do I care necessarily that I have a lot? So
I'm sorry.
About the oils?
I'm talking about the oil.
Yeah, so the oil zone question is akin to the sort of dead zone type of issue as well from agricultural runoff in the Midwest. So those are maybe sort of parallel. This is a one-time, unexpected, obviously, depending on your perspective, unpredictable kind of event. So this one, I guess it remains to be seen how people use this to go forward. So I think the risk is always there, but we sort of have an accumulating risk. This is almost like frog in boiling water. The dead zone from the runoff from agriculture is like frog in boiling water. It just kind of keeps accumulating and accumulating. And now we have a big jolt that is an impact in the same type of area, the same type of reasons, certain wildlife. So this might be the edge that makes people really think. This might push people to rethink the water quality issue from not just energy, but resources and agriculture in general.
I mean, I think it's hard to factor into analyses the type of event that we're seeing in the Gulf right now, because it probably was hard to predict. And I would say even today, I think it's very difficult to estimate what the biological impacts are going to be. They have these oil plumes that are in deep water right now, and modeling what's going to happen to those oil plumes and how they're going to affect the sea life. I think the biologist is struggling with that right now. I think what it has shown us is that when you get involved in offshore drilling, there is the potential for catastrophic events, and it's hard to understand what the magnitude of those catastrophic events is going to be. Climate change is somewhat similar in that there's great scientific certainty about the fact that climate change is happening, that we're causing it. Where the uncertainty lies is exactly what the consequences are going to be. The models may differ. The climate models don't handle things on a regional basis very well right now. So it's hard to pinpoint a place and say it's going to get drier there, it's going to get wetter there. In general, we expect more extreme weather events. We expect some areas to suffer severe drought, other areas to suffer severe flooding. But it's hard to pinpoint the effects. So, I guess one of the nice things about renewable energy is it reduces the number of unknowns you have to deal with, not only in terms of environmental catastrophes, but one of the advantages of building a concentrated solar power plant versus a combined cycle natural gas plant, it's the kind of choice Arizona Public Service had to make when they bought the Solana plant, was the CSP plant is more expensive, but they know what it costs. They pretty much know what it costs, whereas they know what the natural gas plant costs. They don't know what natural gas is going to cost 10 years from now. It's hard to predict those future natural gas prices. There could be large spikes in those natural gas prices. We know the solar energy is free, so once you put all that investment in up front, you have with fair certainty, you know what you're going to be paying for electricity for the next 30 years. You don't have that certainty with fossil fuels. So there's uncertainty in terms of fuel prices, and there's uncertainty in terms of environmental impacts.
Do you think the press does a very good job of conveying those uncertainties, or just leaves them out in discussion of all these different fuel sources and the choices that we make? And for that matter, does the government do a good enough job of looking at and trying, assessing those kind of factors? Even though they can't put a number on it, the fact that one is more predictable, that has some value that needs to be factored in.
Well, I think that's a concept we could all probably do a better job of getting across to the general public.
I think that the kind of detail we discussed, the public, by and large, is not aware of it all, and it's generally not covered in the general press. And, except for maybe the New York Times or something like that, I don't think there's enough attention span to kind of get that message across in the general press. However, I do get a sense that people understand broadly the benefits of what we're trying to do here. There has been a lot of public support for, I think, the kinds of renewable energy standards that a lot of the Southwest states and now across the country are moving toward. And I think it's because there's a general understanding that when you look at the big picture issues of environment and the big cost on the defense side of imported oil and all those things, that in aggregate there's value to moving in this clean energy direction. The other thing that I'm very encouraged, having a lot of young children now in school, that at the elementary and middle school area, that these kinds of concepts are now being conveyed as just fundamental truths. There's environmental issues. We got to move in different directions, and so I think that's very encouraging from my standpoint. So I think, in a general sense, these messages are getting through, but I think the kind of detail we discussed are just not on for the most part on people's the tips of their lips.
I agree with Chuck on that, and we could probably all do a better job at sort of explaining the uncertainties of things that are fairly predictable versus the certainty of things that are not very predictable, like oil spill in the Gulf. I think probably generally renewable energy, since it depends on current solar income, current water resources, that the environmental impacts are a little bit more predictable for the long term than things like the oil spill in the Gulf, which are pretty broad scale, can be pretty catastrophic for one-time events that it's really quite difficult to plan for. So you want to plan for something that could potentially have a large instantaneous impact that you're not sure when it's going to occur, or plan for something that's going to be pretty long-term. You can sort of track it, deal with it along the way. I think that's a good concept. I think that probably needs to get talked about a little more.
I think it's also
the planning and freshwater question that you had, because there's no question that as our resources get more, we're going to be looking more and more to non-freshwater sources to meet a number of our needs, whether that is dramatic as using recycled water for lawn watering and flushing toilets, which we don't do very often right now in the United States, or whether it's simply treating brackish water and using more desal to meet up to treatment standards that we have for drinking water. There's no question that too has its own environmental impacts. And I think one of the things that people like ACES do is they provide forums where we can look at these issues more globally and put them together. Bringing energy and water together allows us to get away from incremental change, where we wake up 10 years from now and suddenly in a landlocked state like Colorado, we have brine streams that are so powerful and toxic they can't be released into the streams, but we have nowhere to put them because we've all moved from treating fresh water to more brackish water and using brackish water desal options for drinking water.